Hi friends. I know it's been a while. I've been out of town working for the last 3 weeks straight. It has been exhausting and I haven't had a moment to collect my thoughts really. So I'm finally doing that. At the beginning of the month, there was the hands off protest that was nationwide, and I think that was very successful. A lot of people showed up. And in my little sleepy town, there were, I think some people counted 400, some people counted 6. I saw some counts of 1,000. I don't know how many people were downtown, but it was a lot. And I had to leave town the very next day for work. And as I was on my way down to Florida, I just had a moment where I was like, maybe I need to call my representative's office and remind her about how many people showed up to protest. And I haven't been getting any responses. They don't answer my calls. Ever since the town hall event, they pretty much stopped answering my calls. And so I leave voicemails. Every few days, I'm leaving a voicemail on Diana's office reminding her to uphold the Constitution and to represent and protect the people of District 1. So I called expecting voicemail, and to my surprise, somebody picked up. And I, kind of started by saying I'm a constituent of Diana's. I wanted to know when she was going to start standing up for us, when she was going to start representing us, that we have a president who is acting like he is above the law and claiming to be above the law, and she's doing nothing about it and actually supporting it. And the phone call started out a little snarky because the staff member on the other end responded and said, well, I don't remember you calling when Joe Biden was president. And I knew that this was just bait, but I didn't take it. So I just responded and I said, I'd like to stay on track. I'm here to talk about the current administration, and unless I'm mistaken, it is your job and Diana's job to speak for what's happening with our current administration. And I even asked, I said, is that correct? And he responded and he's like, yeah, yeah, that's right. Yeah, okay, so let's hear it. So I just kind of unloaded, and I was not mean. I didn't raise my voice, but I was just very firm. And I basically just laid it all out. And I said, I've been calling over and over again. I know for a fact that there are other people in this community, constituents of Diana's, that have been calling over and over again. We're not getting any responses. You don't pick up half the time. You don't answer our questions. You say you'll get back to us and you don't. And we have a First Amendment right to petition the government for a redress of our grievances, and we're going to keep doing that. And it is her job to uphold the Constitution. It is her job to protect us, to protect children and veterans and the elderly, and to make sure that we have the services we need, we have the funding we need to survive. And it was a very long conversation. It ended up lasting 23 minutes, and the staff member listened very patiently the entire time. And he would speak up and interject here and there to defend something Diana was doing or to offer an explanation. And I just went back with facts and I let him know, listen, I am an informed constituent. I'm not stupid. I know what's going on. And so I know better than what she's telling us and what you're telling me right now. But about halfway through, I identified myself as Christy Burke. And the staff member on the other line said, oh yeah, I remember you. I met you at the town hall. So this was a staff member that was at the town hall that I was removed from. And I said, I know things got really rowdy at that town hall. And it's unfortunate that it went that way. But at the same time, you have to understand that we felt like we were being lied to for an hour and a half straight. And that's just not okay. And he said, I understand. I understand that. He didn't try to invalidate me. He actually said, I understand. I said, Diana needs to listen to us. And, she spent the whole time telling us we needed to listen to her, but it is her job to listen to us. And we need another town hall. We need her to meet with us. And I promise if we can schedule something, I will keep my mouth shut. I will tape my mouth shut. I want the people in District 1 to be able to come and have their voices heard. What can we do to schedule a meeting with Diana? What can we do to get her at another town hall so she can actually listen to our concerns and listen to her constituents? I begged him, like I was pleading with him. And, he kind of gave me the runaround. He said, well, she's very busy and, we try to schedule things, but her schedule's really crazy, blah, blah, blah. But he said, I'm going to be doing a mobile office coming up in a few days, and whoever would like to come speak to me can do so, and I'll send those messages to Diana. So I was going to be out of town, but I reached out to everyone I knew and sent out a message. It was only a few days away, so it was very short notice, and I basically organized a small group of about, I think there were like maybe 7-8 people. I can't remember how many people showed up, to go to that mobile office. And it was in the middle of a weekday, early in the morning. They were not advertising this, so I'm assuming they didn't want people to show up. But the fact that this staff member listened to me for 23 minutes, patiently and kindly, and even offered to be there to listen to whoever wanted to come by, that was to me progress, because all of us had been calling, protesting, doing everything we could, and we were getting nothing. So to me, that was huge. Some of them had never done anything like this before. They had never even called their representative before, so that was really big for them. And they were nervous, but they prepared their talking points. Some of them wrote handwritten letters to send to the Congresswoman, and they showed up and they shared their hearts. And I'll have you know that he sat there with them for 2 hours while they shared everything that they needed to share. And they did an audio recording and shared it with me, and I got to listen to the entire thing. It felt productive. It felt like they were being listened to. Every single person shared their thoughts, and there were even times when this staff member would respond and be like, I hadn't really thought about that. That's not something I really considered. Like he was actually listening. And I think we all kind of agreed that either he really did care and was compassionate, at least some, for these concerns, or sorry, I had a spider on me, or he is a really good actor. But regardless, either way, whether he was just pretending or he was actually listening and caring, the fact that he opened that door to listen is a huge step, because before they weren't even listening. And to me, that tells me they have to change their tactics. They have to change their approach, and they can't just ignore us anymore because we're too persistent. And I have to say that had I not been persistent, had I not kept calling, even though I was not getting any answers, even though they weren't calling me back. And actually, I forgot to say this at the beginning. When I first called the office, a woman picked up, and I'm pretty sure it was the woman who was waving her finger in my face with a cross necklace on at the town hall. I could be wrong, but it sounded like her. She picked up, and she sounded like she was rolling her eyes the moment she picked up. And when I asked my question, she said, I have not been briefed on this, which is what they always say to me. The Congresswoman hasn't briefed me on this. And I always ask, well, when are you going to get briefed on these issues? Because it's your job to ask and to be informed. And she let out a big sigh, and it was silent for a minute. I thought she hung up on me. And then she goes, hold on a minute. And that's when she transferred me to the other staff member. I could have just given up and been like, it doesn't matter. Nobody's going to listen. Okay, have a nice day, whatever. But I didn't. I was persistent. And I was persistent with the staff member that got on the phone with me the second time. And I stood my ground, and I didn't let him just talk me off or say, oh, well, you didn't call about Joe Biden. None of that. I remained focused and firm and persistent. I was just kind of taken back by the entire situation. And I was so excited to get on here and share this with you, because I thought, wow, we're doing something. We're making a difference, and we're making steps forward. Even if they're small, these are steps forward. And then something happened a few days ago that really kind of soured my hope. I was just a few miles from home. I was in the passenger seat. It had been a long couple days of traveling. I was exhausted. I was irritated. I was overstimulated. So it was not a good time to call my representative, okay? But I am a very impulsive, kind of last-minute person. I don't plan calls. I just think to call, and then I call. So that's what I did. I said, I need to call. I need to make my daily call. And somebody picked up. It was somebody I'd never spoken with before. They sounded really young. Wouldn't be surprised if she's putting her grandkids on the line to answer calls now, which is what it sounded like. But this person picked up, and I said, I'm a constituent of Diana's. I'm concerned about what's going on. I'd like to know what she's doing about the fact that we have a president who is shipping people off without due process to a foreign prison. A very unconstitutional move. What is she going to do about this? When is she going to speak out against this? And I got the same response I always get, and I've probably heard this response about 50 times now. I'm probably over-exaggerating, but it feels like that much. And the response was, the Congresswoman hasn't briefed me on that. The top news story in the entire country right now for the last 3 weeks, pretty much. And the staff member hasn't been briefed on what the Congresswoman thinks about it. So I responded and I said, I just want to say I've been calling over and over again for months. And every single time you actually pick up, your staff tells me the same thing, that you haven't been briefed on this. Are you just intentionally staying ignorant to the issues, or is this just the generic response that you've been trained to give to every single person who calls because you don't want to face people who are concerned? And they kind of fumbled for a second and kind of nervously laughed and then said, "Thank you so much for calling. Have a nice day," and then hung up. And so I can only assume that it was an accident. They accidentally hung up on me. So I called back because they had not gotten my name. They didn't get my information. That is part of their job, is to get my information and relay the concern to my representative. And they didn't pick up when I called again. So I called a few more times. And after a couple more times of calling, they picked up the phone, and I kid you not, this sounds it sounds like a story I'm making up because it's just so unbelievable. And in what sounded like a little old lady voice, they said, "Hello?" And I got really confused, kind of looked at my phone to see the number I called, and I had just tapped the same number again, so I knew it was the right number. And I said, "Are you disguising your voice?" And they went, "I don't know what you're talking about." And I just kind of I was flabbergasted, honestly. And I said, "What are you doing right now? What is this?" And they said, I don't know what you're talking about." And just laughing. And I said, "Is this really how you treat constituents? I mean, what is going on?" And they're like, "I don't know what you're talking about." And then I was like, did I call the wrong number? And so I was like, is this Diana Harshbarger's office? And they said, no. And then they hung up on me. And I had to take a moment to process that I called a federal government's office, taxpayer funded, and they used a fake voice, laughed at me, and then claimed they weren't the federal government's office. And, I try to stay calm. I really do. And I haven't really popped off in a really long time, pretty much since the town hall. I've been trying to keep it cool, trying to play it smart. It's what I preach here. But I'm also human. And it is completely appropriate to respond to that with anger. Considering what's going on in our country right now, considering what Diana has been doing, her policies, what she's been saying in the media, using racial slurs against her black colleague, calling trans people fairies, laughing about her constituents, calling us snowflakes and radical left because we are concerned about democracy and freedom and the Constitution that she swore an oath to. And her staff is laughing, mocking, ignoring, pretending like when we call, we're not really calling them. It is, I don't have the word for it, but I used a lot of words when I called back. And I did. I called back and I left 2 very angry voicemails, and I blacked out. I don't even remember what all I said, but I know that it wasn't very nice. I called her cruel. I called her evil. I said she was anti-Christian. I said things that I won't repeat here on YouTube that are perfectly within my First Amendment rights to say, but were very pointed and harsh nonetheless. And, in those moments after I do it, I'm like, oh God, I wish I just stayed calm. I wish I would have not done that. But I don't regret it. I don't regret anything I said. I don't regret how angry I got. And in fact, I think we should be angrier. what these people are doing, this is not just politics. This is not, oh, they're just they're a party I don't agree with. This is not regular politics. This is not normal. We have every right to respond accordingly, and we need to be responding accordingly. Not enough people are scared. Not enough people are angry, and that's because they're still falling for the propaganda, and they're still very soaked in their privilege because it hasn't hit them yet. And for some people, it might not ever hit them because they benefit the most from this. But just because you might benefit from the system, or just because it might not affect you so strongly, it doesn't mean that it's not hurting your fellow Americans. And I don't want a system that benefits me or doesn't hit me, but hurts so many others. Again, all I want is freedom, our rights, for our representatives to do their job, to represent us while they're taxing us, because taxation without representation is theft. And when somebody's stealing from you and laughing about it and mocking you, you have every right to be angry, and you have every right to respond. And at minimum, we should be making sure that they don't have a moment of peace. Make your voice heard, because it is the most basic foundational right we have, to be heard, to be free. And we need to preserve that and use it. Exercise your right to the fullest extent that you can. And I think that's all I have to say. So, hi, it's Christy from the future. I'm just coming with an update after what you just saw. I went to another one of these meetings, these mobile offices, with a staff member of Diana's. It was the same staff member that I spoke with originally, and that was at the very first mobile office. And I just want to let you guys know that the last one, we had 10 people there, 9 or 10. I think I said 7 or 8 in the video, but we had about 9 or 10. Today, we had 23 people show up from the area. It was very last minute, and they all showed up to share their concerns. And I shared what I wanted to say. We recorded it for transparency. I'm going to share the audio bit of my portion, but I am going to cut out any parts where other people chime in or are speaking, because I let everybody know that I wasn't going to be posting, their thoughts and what they were sharing on YouTube or anything like that. It was just for transparency. But a lot of people have asked, what do I say when I call? How do we correspond? And so maybe that might be just kind of a way for you guys to see how I talk to the people that are representing us, or are working for the people that are representing us, to make my voice heard. And hopefully that might give you some inspiration or empowerment to go and do the same yourself. So I'm just going to play it right after this. Again, I'm going to kind of cut just the parts where other people speak, because I didn't ask anybody else's permission to share, and just kind of give you guys an idea of what this looks and, what this sounds like when we do meet with the staff, and the things that we say, and how it goes. I know that at the beginning of this meeting, you said that you've never really had these groups kind of show up at these mobile offices. This is new. And in the time that Diana has been serving, have you ever experienced protests like we saw in downtown Kingsport, Johnson City, and the Tri-City areas? The amount of people in the streets protesting. My biggest issue is the fact that we have a representative who is here to represent the district and the people in it, all people in it. She is ignoring our calls. She's ignoring our concerns. I'm sure, I don't know how many people in here have called the office and not received any correspondence back, got a voicemail. They didn't have, or they said the Congresswoman hasn't briefed me on this issue.
Did get
Is that what, because that's what they tell me every time. And she sent it after she already voted, which seems counterintuitive. I mean, I think that's kind of common sense, right? So I think with all of this, the fact that we're not getting any response, and we have all been very persistent. We have massive protests going on downtown. Last time there was a group of 10, now we have 15, 20 people here.
23.
Thank you. So with this growing persistence of people that have concerns, that are asking for the Congresswoman to actually address them, my question is, at what point is she going to actually acknowledge that she has a lot of people in her district that don't like what she's doing? Because she's in the media saying that we are just radical, crazy snowflake leftists. We're fairies. We are paid to be here. We're paid to protest. We are not, she basically treats us like our position doesn't matter in the district. I mean, I've heard it. I've heard all the things. Yes. I mean, I could pull up the interview right now, but she was in an interview right after the town hall with a gentleman talking about we smell bad, and people with nose rings don't fly in East Tennessee, and people in East Tennessee don't have purple hair. And that was after, during the town hall, she said I got to dumb it down, and I even said in the town hall, I said, are we dumb? And she said, no, I was just saying I have to dumb it down for me. And then immediately went into an interview days later and said to this radio guy, I got to dumb it down for these people. So we're getting double speak. We're not getting a response from the representative. You have to respect me. You have to listen to me. This is what we heard at the town hall. It is her job to listen to us. That is literally her job, to represent us, to listen to us, and to uphold the Constitution. She's not doing a single one of those things right now.
Good to know.
Yes. And my conversation with you was very pleasant, and that is why we were able to do this. It was very pleasant. I have not had a pleasant time with the staff, and in fact, I have been put off many times. Every single one.
Okay.
When I don't get an answer at one, I call another. When I don't get an answer at another, I call another, and I leave voicemails. This is a federal government office that is taxpayer funded. And it is, no matter how many angry people you get every day, it is your job to listen. And I know you know that. I know you know that. And I'll give me just a second. So I'm struggling with the fact that I already don't have a good reputation with the representative, okay? And it is not because I am a radical leftist. It's not because I hate God or I hate the country or anything like that. It's because I love the area that I live in, and I love the people that live here. And I believe that all of the people, even those that voted for Diana and voted for Trump, are going to be severely impacted and affected by these policies. I am a very privileged person, and I'm not too affected by unaffordable living because I live a very simple life. I go hiking. I don't spend a lot of money, right?
Yeah,
so I'm not that affected. I'm not on federal funding. I don't have kids in education. I don't deal with any of this stuff, and I'm a pretty privileged person. But I know that in our district, a lot of people rely on federal funding, and they rely on these programs that are being slashed, and they rely on having a government that actually takes care of them. And what bothers me is that I'm not affected, I'm not impacted as much by this stuff, but I'm going out there and I'm trying to call and protest and reach out to Diana to get her to listen to all of the people in district, represent all of the people that probably don't even like me, didn't vote like me, and probably love Trump, but don't realize that these policies are being enacted because Diana's not being upfront and honest about the policies that she's enacting and what she stands for, just like when she sends an email about the SAVE Act after she's already voted on it, and in a really manipulative way that we don't even get to let our voices heard. So I'm gonna let everybody speak. I don't wanna take too much of your time, but I really need Diana to start listening to us, and I think the reason she's not listening is because she doesn't see us as people that are actually, that matter. When she calls trans people fairies, and she's calling us snowflakes and all of this stuff, that is not the way you treat your constituents. That's not the way you talk about them. And I really need her to actually listen and acknowledge that there are people in this area that don't like what's going on, and it's really time for her to hold a town hall and to actually listen to us. And I just want to remind you that persistence is key. Just because they hang up on you, just because they don't answer, just because they're rude or downright cruel, doesn't mean that you don't still have a voice and you don't still have power. Keep exercising it to the fullest extent and stay persistent, because even if you're ignored and hung up on, there might come a day when they actually have to listen, because so many of you are actually staying persistent. So this is my call to you to please stay persistent, keep calling, keep trying to schedule town halls and meetings, and whatever you can do to get your voices heard to those that are supposed to represent us but are just loyal to Trump. Do it, take action, and make your voice heard.